Thank you. So let's canvass the issue regarding GNPC, ACA Energy for you. And thankfully, joining us for this segment also, Benjamin Boachi, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACA. Dr. Steve Manteaw, you can't have it any better than that. Chairman, Alliance of CSOs working on extractive and anti-corruption and good governance. Andrew Japamesa is MP for 2nd and Deputy Energy Minister. Thank you, gentlemen, for making the time to join us on Newsfile.
Pleasure to be on something. Thank you very much.
Great.
Regards to the panel in the studio.
Great. Start with you, Ben. This is a statement that 15 CSOs came together to issue. And among others, you are very suspicious of the deal that the government is getting into to borrow, take a loan of 1.6 billion, is it? Yeah. And to hand to sort of ACA Energy, part of it we know, and a part of it for GNPC as part of the processes in seeking to get whatever it is. Tell us, you ask a series of questions, but tell us, what is the basis of the suspicion and how much work have all these CSOs done about this situation to come to the conclusion that you come to and asking Parliament to investigate it?
Thank you, Evans, again, in regards to your esteemed panel on this show. I think, contrary to what we heard in Parliament, that we are a bunch of ignorant people who don't know what we are about, we bring to this conversation a rich experience across the timeline of this particular transaction, dating back 2009, when ACA first came into Ghana and its contract was abrogated. So we have followed the proceeding, the shift in policy, followed the costs and transactions relative to those particular blocks. And we bring fair understanding to the conversation. And that, of course, is not to claim that we do know better than anybody. And it's a genuine national exercise that we do to make inputs into this conversation so that we can check where we are erring to promote transparency, accountability, and ultimately value for the Ghanaian people. So we looked at this agreement, refreshed our minds on what has happened in the space, and thought that we could take a second look at it. And before we even do these kind of statements, we listen to people within the circles, people who have information, people who can support analysis of that nature, who can check what we are even saying. If we require even a geologist on some of these matters, we are able to summon all those information to be able to put out sound judgment on conversations of this nature. And to bring that into perspective, we have followed Hess when they were attempting to develop the Deepwater Tunnel block, which they had actually done appraisal. In 2016, Hess decided to offload part of its shares, and they were to offload 50% of the shares and keep 50% of that block. So Hess sold 40% to Look Oil and Fuel Trade, 38% and 2% respectively, at a value of $160 million at the time. Down 2018, the value of the asset had dropped for ACA to purchase the remaining 50% for $100 million. All right, so the assets, if you're looking at the asset and how it is valued, it should be valued in the books of Ghana is how much those who own it today have spent on the block. So if you pull that together, you're looking at about $260 million for that asset. And then you can add on whatever investment has been made subsequent to those acquisitions that were made back then. So we tracked those numbers, and we were worried that, I mean, these transactions happened 3-4 years back, and admittedly, ACA has done some work. The partners have done some work. And how do we measure the work that has been done to be able to accurately top up what has been spent already to make a fair judgment of what the value of the asset is and support what GNPC wants to do? And then we realized that, you know, there was a claim that ACA has already spent about $800 million so far. And that tickled a lot of inquisition as to how that expenditure happened in the past 2.5 years or so. And you realize that ACA has drilled they drilled 3 wells on the deep water tunnel, and they have drilled 2 wells on the south deep water block. So cumulatively, that is 5 wells, and then some appraisal on the deep water tunnel block. But we are talking about $260 million acquisition that represents 12 wells and appraisal work that had been done. So if you compare the two, you will see a vast difference in those numbers. And we have also checked how much ACA says it values its asset currently with all the work that had been done since acquisition and you know, the further work that has been done. And they quote to ACA ASA, which is 50% shareholder in ACA Energy, that the worth of that asset in Ghana on the Pecan field is $225 million. All right. So if you hear the next morning that GNPC is saying that they have done their own evaluation and it is worth $1.6 billion, it raises concern. And also to think that ACA tells Ghana that the asset is worth $2.5 billion, it raises further questions. Why they would represent a different value in their home country and a different value in Ghana. So these are the inquisitions. These are the questions that we are asking for us to re-examine the whole context to see how much we are actually paying for, and also pay attention to the fact that it's not a simple calculation of what barrels of oil exist on the ground and paying for it. Because oil, if not produced, doesn't mean anything. It doesn't add value to anything.
As we understand, you feel this is risky. It's a risky sort of transaction to get into. First, you are not sure if the value that we are putting on this is worth it. Now, as we understand, they have done independent valuation, i.e. from the GNPC, bringing in experts internationally to do this job independently. And the idea is that, as we have said over the time, that we shouldn't allow our mineral resources to be taken by foreigners and repatriate the money, take them away, and then we sit here and we take, you know, peanuts in taxes. So if already we have 10% stake interest in ACA, and by this process we are going to add 37% to make our holding 47%. In the AGM, we already have 15%, and we are seeking 70%, so that we'll get 85% controlling stake. Why will this not be a risky business worth going into, particularly when it is expected, as we understand, that the government of Ghana will reap in royalties approximately 7.51 billion US dollars in normal terms, and that substantial foreign exchange inflows are estimated around 27 billion US dollars in nominal terms.
I think you're throwing out a lot of numbers that we would need to really break it down. And I made the point that you can do all those estimations, all right? You can put numbers to all of those things. Technically, if the oil is not produced, you are not sure. You are never sure of those numbers. So when you're going to such a negotiation, your interest really is to measure the risk, to say, how much do I really need to pay so that if these things don't happen, I can safely say that I measure the risk accurately. Yesterday, we had a beautiful opportunity to speak to the, as you call it, independent valuers of the asset, and only to realize that, what should go into such valuation, they had no control over the parameters that went into the valuation. And they admitted it, that you gave us numbers that we plugged into our analysis. So whatever generates out of that analysis is just what you gave us. And one of our colleagues essentially put it that if you put baggage into an analysis, it's baggage you get out of that analysis. And essentially, that is what has been generated and presented to Parliament as support. And it is not difficult to find what ACA has declared to be the value of the asset on the stock market. It's not difficult to find, for which you would want to context $2.5 billion by bringing in a so-called independent evaluator. And even what happened within this space is extremely odd, where you have parties contending for sale and purchase come together and say, let somebody come and advise us how much the value of the asset is. And that is extremely odd. I asked a direct question to the so-called evaluators, how many times have they done that? Where have they done that? And you won't get a response to that, because it's extremely unusual for such a situation to happen, because it's a banter to save money when you are having to purchase an asset of that nature. And therefore, you come in with your analysis to show that this is how I see the value, and this is how much I'm willing to offer you. And you negotiate to a position that you feel absorbs you significantly of the risks that you are exposing yourself to.
Okay.
But then let's come down to the risk that we are talking about. You see, there are two separate fields with two separate agreements. And the fundamental question we are asking really is this: why is ACA bundling the two fields and selling them as one transaction to Ghana? So you have one field that has gone through appraisal by HES and subsequent appraisal by ACA. And you have one field that only has one discovery and one dry well. That discovery has not been appraised yet. What that means is that the certainty of the recoverable oil on the ground hasn't been established. Yet, you have an agreement that says that we are selling that asset to the people of Ghana at a set value. And we struggle, to even see what value and segregate that from how much we are selling we are buying the Pecan field, from how much we are selling the South Deep Water Tunnel to us. But thankfully, it came out in the presentation yesterday that the valuers actually valued the one well that has been drilled, unappraised, at $700 million. And that is extremely odd, how they were able to come to that valuation for a well that hasn't been appraised. And if you even check the appraisal program that ACA itself submitted to the Petroleum Commission, they contend that they need new technology to be able to produce from the Nyankom discovery. And that possibility of developing that Nyankom discovery can take a while. And that gives me a sense why they are not willing.
All right, let me bring on Dr. Steve Manteaw here. Now, Doc, we have been in a process. We started not now to get in and get sufficient interest so that we can take care of our own bills, free SHS, all of these things, we can pay for them, rather than allow, you know, a few multinationals to come in and take the money and get away with them. So in principle, this must be good. What is wrong with it?
All right, thank you very much, Samson. And let me say that I come to this discussion from a position that is aligned to what GNPC is seeking to do or attempting to do. It's been my long-held position that all over the world, countries that have been able to maximize their returns from their extractive sector are those that are active participants, directly or indirectly, in the extraction. But somehow, as a country, we confine ourselves to a mere rent collector. And even the rent collection, we are not able to do it properly. There are a lot of tax leakages in the extractive sector. And the only way we can retain value within the national economy is to get in there. And I've been advocating for this for some years now. When I was chair of PIAC, we did some analysis, revenue flow analysis from the sector. And we discovered that CAPEX was giving us much more than the taxes. So PIAC made a categorical recommendation to government to explore opportunities for getting a bigger bite at the cake, either in existing blocks or in future contracts. But there is also another compelling reason to support what GNPC is attempting to do. A study done by the Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas shows that in about 7 to 8 years, last 7 to 8 years, we haven't had any meaningful injection of investment into exploration in Ghana, except what GNPC has been doing on the Voltairean Basin. Now, our fields are also beginning to mature. If you take Jubilee, for instance, we have extracted about half of the Jubilee resources. So in the next 9 to 10 years, there will be no Jubilee. We would have been done with it. If you take 10, we've extracted about a third of it. And if you take Sankofa Jiname, we've done about a fourth of it. So unless we find new fields, our oil industry is grinding to a collapse. So it becomes very imperative for us. But unfortunately, because of energy transition, the countries that will come and put their money into exploration are all walking away. And it's understandable because the EU has introduced a program called taxonomy, which classifies companies into bad and good companies. So if you're a company that invests in fossil fuel, you are a bad company. And so the financial institution, once you've been categorized as such, will not give you money. In fact, the financial institutions themselves are also being classified in terms of where their financing goes. So you find that BP, for instance, for 2021 alone, they have cut 40% of their investments into fossil fuel. ENI has issued a statement that it is not injecting a single dollar into any new project. Now, the risk we face as a resource owner is that if we don't take urgent steps to build our own local capacity to produce oil in this country, when these IOCs pull out, we will be left with an asset that has no meaning to us because we cannot extract it. We don't have the capacity to extract it. So it's very dire. And indeed, this energy transition thing sometimes is presented to us as an event, but it is not. It's going to go through a prolonged phase. Look, about 100 years ago, coal was written off. But today, coal continues to be a dominant fuel for power generation in Australia, New Zealand, Japan, America, and other places. But they are not extracting the coal for revenue, for export revenue. No, nobody is exporting coal. Rather, they are using the coal domestically to diversify the energy mix of their countries.
Tell me about this.
As we go through about 50 years of transition, and Ghana has the hydrocarbons, if we have the capacity, we'll be able to extract it. It will be very cheap.
So tell me about this. Tell me about this. The CSOs, 15 CSOs, they acknowledge the fact, and I think Ben has said it a while ago, that the decision to support GNPC to become an operator is not a new conversation. 10 years ago, the country decided to support GNPC to become an operator by allocating a portion of oil revenue. So far, about $1 billion has been given to the corporation, but it has failed to drill one well. Is that a fact?
It is.
So is there caution?
In fact, PIAC has raised issues about that. That GNPC needs to quickly move into its core business and build its operatorship capacity. So there's no doubt about it. GNPC as a vehicle through which we are able to maximize our returns from the oil sector has issues. But I've spoken about GNPC governance issues time and again. And as we take this decision to actually acquire stake in ACA, it becomes imperative that we fix the GNPC governance problem. We need to find ways in which we insulate GNPC from political interferences so that it will be a pure business venture.
So these problems exist, and that's why the CSOs say that there is no point risking billions of dollars of public money in bets that might instead go to support Ghana's health, education, and economic development. You don't agree?
No, you see, we'll be behaving irrationally if we think that because there is a problem with GNPC, we should not actually do things that will inure to our long-term benefit when actually the IOCs pull out.
Okay.
So I think we are doing a prudent thing, and the fact that we recognize that GNPC has issues is also good. Now, I like the idea of having Exproco as the vehicle for participating in the ACA. Why? Because it affords us the opportunity that as Exproco's assets appreciate in value, we can list Exproco and raise money on the stock.
Who or what is Exproco, and when did Exproco come in, for what purpose?
You know, under the previous government, a decision was taken. It was a strategic decision taken by GNPC to form subsidiaries. It wasn't just about Exproco. There was another one, TradeCo, which was established by GNPC with the hope of getting TradeCo to market its crude oil. So you build capacity in that area, and you kind of specialize and get your own subsidiaries to do that for you. And then Exproco would then do the exploration for GNPC. Okay. Somehow we had a change in government, and that whole strategy got abandoned. But this affords us the opportunity to now rethink the GNPC strategy again. Look, GNPC itself cannot raise money from the stock exchange. Why? Because the statute of its establishment makes GNPC the custodian of our hydrocarbon resources. So if you go list GNPC on the stock exchange, whoever buys into it becomes a part owner of the hydrocarbon resource that belongs to all Ghanaians. So we cannot do that. So it makes sense to set up vehicles like Exproco, which can in future be floated to raise money for exploration activity. Okay.
Now, Ben, let me come to you for this very quick one, because I pulled up this article or news story of 16th March 2021. And it's headed on myjoyonline.com. It says, petroleum industry facing imminent apocalypse as CSOs push to get GNPC to explore and produce its own oil. So basically in this, you had stated that there was the risk of an imminent downturn in the medium term, and that a stranded asset in the long term will location, and therefore you said and urged the GNPC to get ready to step in with the capacity to explore and produce Ghana's oil reserves. Are you going against this now?
I think we are just being alarmists from that perspective. I mean, I only heard Dr. Steve on that. I didn't hear any other civil society organization really mention that we are in such a dire need. And it even contradicts, really, some of the facts that are afoot. And this 2021.
This was contained in a statement that was issued by Civil Society Platform on Oil and Gas in Ghana. And it was under the hand of Dr. Steve Manteaw. You didn't agree with this at the time, just a couple of months ago?
No. I don't share that position. And I think, you see, sorry about this.
Go ahead.
The situation we have is a particular transaction that we are critiquing. And I like the question you posed, that we have been there. It's not as if we are just all of a sudden realizing that we need to empower GNPC to own assets, or we need to give them money to become an independent operator. That was decided way back in 2011 when we passed the Petroleum Revenue Management Act to set aside up to 55% of the net carried and participating interest for GNPC to do these kinds of work. All right. It is the politics that has made them fail to deliver on this. In 2013-2014, GNPC had a cash balance of $200 million. They didn't even know what to do with it. It was sitting in the bank. All right. They didn't do exploration. They didn't drill a well until that money was absorbed into the political system, to the central government. They were granting loans to the Ministry of Finance and financing other activities that was not core to their mandate. So we've been back in circles around how do you empower GNPC. We haven't fixed the governance challenges that we do have in GNPC. And also to highlight that Exloco as an entity hasn't failed to exist. It is still a company owned by GNPC. So that policy orientation is still there. It's not dead. There are stakes in other blocks. E&I recently made a discovery. Exloco has about 4% in that block. There are other blocks that about 8 of them that Exloco has interest. GNPC keeps financing those interests. So we have failed to take the strategic decisions that
in 30 seconds, tell me you are against this in principle, or what do you seek?
We need to have a strategic path that allows GNPC to build a capacity that it wants to have, which we agree. And I'm saying that we have supported that process for the past 10 years. All right. It's not yielding results, and therefore we need to evaluate it to see how do we turn that around for that results to come. But we have a particular transaction on our hands that we are querying. We are trying to understand and see where the problems are so that we can fix it for the country. And that is what we are trying to do at this point, and not to say that we don't understand that there is energy transition happening. We have to put all of that into perspective. I'm not sure you have time for us to be able to do that. But all of that is being used as a smoke screen to really promote a very bad transaction that is really going to suck money away and give into foreign hands, which they are.
All right. Thank you, Andrew Ejapamensah, MP for Sekondi and Deputy Energy Minister. You clearly will disagree with the suggestion that there seems to be some smoke screen somewhere over what is going on, and the intention is not exactly what we seek to be pursuing, seeking to get this loan for the purpose. What do you say?
Statement obviously is unfortunate, and I'm particularly disappointed that my good friend Ben will go that route, because there's a suspicion that something untoward is happening. Really, it has no basis at all. Because indeed, but before I even, let me say good morning to my co-panelists and of course, those in the studio. You see, I hear Ben to be saying that when you look at the agreement, when I look at the agreement, I see Ghana being shortchanged. It will be interesting for Ben to show us the agreement that he's seen. Because there really is no agreement. GNPC has not gone into any agreement with anybody.
I think you can replace that with a transaction. Sorry, you can replace that with a transaction. I think it's really it. We presented a transaction to Parliament.
There's no transaction. There is an intent to go into a transaction. And what GNPC Exploco through the Ministry of Energy did was to go to Parliament, indeed first to Cabinet, to seek approval to proceed on that route. Subsequently, when Cabinet approved that, yes, we think that this is something that has to be done. And indeed, the Finance Minister hinted this in the media review budget. If you look in paragraphs 315 and 316, it was clear that this is the path for obvious reasons, including the admonition by the CSOs themselves in your 16th March reference that you made a short while ago, that if GNPC is not empowered to go into operatorship, we would be left with these assets that get stranded at the period where we get to the point that all the majors would have exited investment in this space. Okay, so post the Cabinet approval, the Energy Minister and the Finance Minister have gone to Parliament to seek a mandate to go and negotiate, obviously based on some work that has been done. And so to suggest that something untoward has been done or has been occasioned Ghana when indeed no agreement exists, it's really, to borrow the words of my very good senior Kweku Baku, engaging in an exercise in premature ejaculation. That's precisely how I see my colleagues in the civil society space.
But this, don't you see the beauty of this? That all the time, when they come together and look at issues and raise them, and I remember very much when you were in opposition, you were in full support of them because this is your area of some expertise. See at this time that they are raising this, and a major player with them, Dr. Steve Manteaw, disagrees with them. Wouldn't you rather want to sort of examine the things they are talking about rather than just simply, dismiss them?
No, I'm not dismissing anybody now. I'll be the last person to dismiss any suggestion or input from civil society.
All right.
What I'm saying is that the suspicion that something untoward is being done has no basis whatsoever. Indeed, the statement that they put out contains inaccurate representations. Indeed, some statements that they made are clearly false.
No, let's be specific. They're speaking about the values and the risk in the values. What do you say to that?
Samson.
Yes.
Any transaction, you are a lawyer. I'm sure that you've done transactions in sale purchase where the basis for the negotiation is some valuation that you do. Nobody can sit in the comfort of his room and put out figures. Indeed, if you look at the document that was submitted to Parliament, it is not only one valuation that has been done. GNPC themselves have done a valuation. GNPC has commissioned a joint valuation with ACA. ACA themselves have engaged Pareto and Arctic Securities to do independent valuations for them. Okay? All these valuations churned out figures based on the assessment of the contingent resources which are established and the prospects. This is the basis that GNPC went to Cabinet and said that, look, we think that these assessments that we have done is something that we can can serve as a basis for whatever negotiations that we go in with ACA AGM. So can we get approval of cabinet and by extension parliament to go and engage in this negotiation? When the documents were submitted to parliament, some comments were made, which then led to parliament approving a cap of 1.1 billion as basis for GNPC to go and negotiate. And what parliament proceeded to say was that, look, this in itself does not give you a mandate to go and consummate any transaction. Go conduct the negotiation, and whatever conclusions that you reach with ACA, bring it back to parliament for approval. That's exactly
what do you say? What do you say to what they suggest ultimately, that to take a stake of $1.3 billion in a field whose front-end design cost should not be anything more than $300 million? What you are simply doing is that Ghana's, oil underground is being sold to you indirectly per that deal.
Samson, that's not true. Indeed, the acquisition or the proposed acquisition is targeted at two contract areas. That is the AGM block, okay, and then the ACA block. One is established contingent resources. One is prospective. And I agree that to the extent that the AGM block has not been appraised in itself, okay, should form part of the basis for the negotiation that GNPC will go into with ACA.
Okay.
There's no dispute whatsoever at all. But these prospects have been established through seismic data acquisition and some work that has been done that is the industry practice with respect to oil and gas industry, okay? And so to suggest that some short change when the definitive agreement itself have not been reached, that's why I have the difficulty.
All right.
Because the statements that they made were all definitive, as if to say some agreement has been reached that has been submitted to Parliament for approval.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that obviously is not the case.
So, Senior, you in Parliament are going to insist that there is no point for the Speaker to, set up any probe as they are investigation as they are requesting?
But what you cannot put something on nothing. What is there to probe?
Okay. You cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Dr. Steve Manteaw, in some 1 minute, how do you see a sort of a consensus or a sort of a management coming together on this issue? How do we get to resolve what they have raised?
I think we are heading in that direction because I think there were initially some misconceptions. I've heard some of my own colleagues say that ACA bought the block from us for 100 million, and now they are flipping it to us for 1.3 billion. To set the record straight, ACA did not buy the block from us. It bought it from Hess Petroleum. We were all in this country when Hess Petroleum indicated they were leaving. According to our Petroleum Act, we have a right of first refusal. We did not take advantage of it, and ACA bought it. ACA could have sold it the next day for whatever price they want. That's the nature of the business. In fact, in the industry, they call it speculation. People move in there and speculate and all that. It's normal practice, but you need to have laws to check it.
Okay.
So it's not true, the impression being created they bought from us. We actually did not actually play our cards well. At the time when, Hess Petroleum indicated they were leaving, we should have moved in there to acquire it. Is
there anything worth investigating as they petition Parliament?
No, I think it's just lack of information. A lot of us, I've also asked questions from various quarters, and I think GNPC, I've gone to them, I've asked questions, they provided information, and now I understand that we are not actually buying at 1.3, but rather it's a ceiling, which has even been brought down to 1.1.
Okay.
And so once the negotiations are still ongoing, we are hoping that we'll negotiate better to bring it down.
All right.
There's that prospect.
Thank
you. I think I should commend GNPC for being very open about this issue.
All right. Ben, you don't think that the meeting the opportunity they've afforded you to explain things to you and to open up everything, as it were, the books to you, sufficiently, cures what you are seeking by your petition to Parliament?
And that is what we do. We engage GNPC. I mean, we speak to everybody in the space when these transactions of this nature come in. And I want to correct that. Nobody has said that they bought it from Ghana. They didn't buy it from Ghana. We have talked about Hess doing appraisal and selling it $100 million. ACA itself quotes the value of their asset in Ghana. And these are numbers that we have to interrogate. And that's exactly what we are doing, to see how we bring value to Ghana. GNPC itself has, contracted somebody to value an unappraised field at $700 million. We need to interrogate that.
Okay.
And we are raising those questions because it didn't add up, to the standards of the industry, where, you see the risk and the fact that the well hasn't been appraised, you haven't established the volumes on the ground, and you are valuing at $700 million. It cannot be right on the Ghanaian people. And those are the questions that we are raising at this
Thank you very much. Ben Boakye, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Dr. Steve Manteaw is Chairman, Alliance of CSOs working on extractive and anti-corruption and good governance. Andrew Ejapa-Mensah is a MP for Secondee and the Deputy Energy Minister. And it's very interesting for me and intriguing that on this issue, Dr. Steve Manteaw and this group will disagree, because he's almost always with them. And I'm hearing from Duncan Amoah, also of the CSO, suggesting that if this goes on and it is approved, the country will be fleeced.